Sorry, everybody. Yeah, see that's why I can't do playlists. I can't put together a playlist. And if I shuffle it, I don't know what's gonna happen because my playlists I don't even make them anymore. But when I do, they just turn into these giant body horror conglomeration monsters of just all sorts of different things. And like you said, you don't want to go from the Beatles to, I don't know, Bruce Springsteen, and then all of a sudden Geordie Greep comes up and people are like, what the hell is this? I don't know. I like it.
All right, Madison, we got my friend DJ back on this week. We're talking about his top albums of 2024. He is a avid music lover, whatever you want to call it, has spreadsheets of every single album that's coming out and what he's kind of tracking. And he seems to find some, I would say, hidden gems that aren't just the top of the pops. So we have a good chat about that, he and I, and he's actually put a playlist together with us, which we will link in the show notes and share on socials if you want to check out all the songs and these albums he's talking about. And it should be a good episode for anyone who likes music.
Right on. After we wrap up today's interview, stick around to find out what we've been watching lately.
You said you got back to me today. Let's do this. Let's talk about top albums of the year and all that.
Yeah.
Once again, between work, between kids, and then starting like end of September, I've just been watching Halloween scary movies. And so I haven't been listening to, and plus like now is the time when new releases, at least ones I'm interested in, start to drop off. So I'm like, oh man, I got to cram. I got to make sure I remember what was good about them. And
it's like being back in school, right? You're like, oh no, there's a deadline. Now we really got to start doing something.
I know. I started having flashbacks. I was getting the cold sweats and having nightmares, being back at BYU or UVU, either way. That one was better. But watching, keeping up with kids, chasing them around, and watching a bunch of scary movies. Some bad, some good. Some I've seen, some are new.
Yeah, I was with you. I watched some of the first old classic scary movies I'd never seen before, including Friday the 13th.
No, we watched Halloween. I've actually never seen any of the Friday the 13th movies.
You're right, Halloween. And I've been talking scary movies with my friend, and he's going to hate that I mixed that up. Anyways, Halloween, you're right, because I remember walking across Provo at night the day after, and I was like, oh no, this was a terrible movie to watch when I had work and then like left and came home at like 11 p.m. or midnight.
Yeah, you were spooked you were going to see the shape.
Yep.
Hiding around the corner.
Or driving a station wagon.
Yeah. Funny enough, well, no, he does drive. Yeah, he drives in a lot of these movies. I've come to realize. I haven't gotten to the cross-country trip yet. I think that's in H20, H2O, and which is Halloween 7, but then you start mixing up the timeline. There's like 3 different timelines or 4 different, technically. And so depending on what timeline it is, I think it's actually only the 3rd movie.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's the one where Jamie Lee Curtis is living in California, and so he's got to go after her. And so he has a cross-country road trip. So that's next on my list. But the last couple Halloweens have soured. I mean, I went back and watched Halloween 78 to do a palate cleanser, and it was great. Mm-hmm. But the last few, the Halloween 4, 5, and 6, they keep getting worse and worse. I'm like, I might have to try to finish the series, the last couple, next October, or at least in a few months, because I don't think I can do it. I got to spend more time with good movies, or at least fun movies, even if they're not amazing. But yeah, I've watched like 4 or 5 Halloween movies this month, so
that's pretty good.
But no Friday the 13th yet. I don't know why I've not gotten to them as of yet.
Yes,
I finally watched the Nightmare on Elm Street, the original last Halloween, and I actually thought it was really good. I thought it was quite good. It was fun. It was gory and a bit spooky and scary. I watched the second one a couple weeks ago though, and it was not as good. But that's
Wow.
usually the horror movie sequel theme. Most of the time, they drop off for one reason or another. Sometimes
Yeah.
they come back up.
With some of them having 10 movies, yeah, it's a little up and down. You can be like, well, you'll catch a good one here or there when someone else gets to helmets.
Right, and I mean, after the first one, usually whoever the mastermind, the creative force behind the original idea is gone or mostly gone, and so
Yeah.
you have other people trying to go off of their ideas, or even they start to incorporate other popular tropes or themes from what's become popular since that movie came out, and it's really mixed results. But some series do okay. I think, and I know I've turned this now into a scary movie podcast. I have finally caught up on all the Scream movies, and the first is far and away the best, no
Mhm.
contest. But for the most part, they never get so bad you not necessarily want to watch them. So if you want a scary movie franchise to work your way through, there's 6 of those, and they're all, I'd say, mostly average to good or great, even in the case of the first one. Just, I'd say Scream 3 is probably the lowest, but we started getting into this, and I started pulling up my
Yeah.
letterbox and seeing what I've been watching.
You had to tell the people.
That's
So
been my October.
lower expectations for Scream 3. The rest, well, I would say are pretty good. Yeah, let's talk music. This year's had a lot of albums released. Honestly, I was going through the list before our call and I was like, there's a lot of old artists that are releasing music now. New Kids on the Block released a new album. Green Day did again. You
Really?
have, yeah, you have, Beyonce with Cowboy
Yes.
Carter. But we want to talk about what you think your at least top 3, and then also top 10 albums are of the year and how that may differ from our list.
Yeah, so I'll start with a kind of a slightly deeper dive into my top 3. These have been pretty consistent, set this way in not necessarily a particular order, but this top 3 probably since about May. These are all from earlier in the year. The first one, and probably my favorite album this year, has been Adrianne Lenker with Bright Future. Now, I don't know if you know who Adrianne Lenker is.
Nope.
Or aware of her. She's a singer-songwriter, kind of a bit of folk and Americana style. If you've heard of Big Thief, the band Big Thief, that's her band, which they're, in my opinion, one of the better bands, or if not the best, doing it today.
Yeah, we hopped inside my car and I drove in circles round the freight train yard.
Just an incredible band. Everyone's so talented in that group, but just her on her own and her solo work she's very, very good. She's just writes these amazing lyrics, and I can just sit and listen to her with her voice and the harmonies she arranges. I can sit and listen to her album front to back, especially this one, and every single day if I had to or wanted to. It's my most listened to record this year. She's an excellent guitar picker. Like I said, Americana, that kind of country style. She can pick it like Townes Van Zandt or someone, or John Prine, that style of guitar picking. This record, especially compared to a lot of Big Thief and even her previous solo output, is more sparse, I'd say, instrumentally. Most songs are just her singing, maybe some harmony, and then some very sparse mellow piano or guitar picking, maybe strumming. Occasionally a violin will come in to add a little flavor, a little depth to that. But yeah, she's just an excellent songwriter, and I'd say probably the best one out there today that I know of anyway.
Do you have a couple favorite tracks off the album?
Yeah, I was going to say probably my favorite, or at least the one that if you're just going to sit down and listen to one, that really grabs it grabs my attention, and from what I've seen, the general consensus, her track Vampire Empire. It just has this very interesting lyrical flow with the wordplay she's doing, and the rhyming scheme. I'd almost say addicting, just the way that she sings it.
Vampire, empire, on the fish, and she's my kiss.
And like I said, so a lot of the songs, especially leading up to that track, sits in the middle of the record. They've got more of a sparse, soft guitar picking or piano plunking. But this one starts adding in these very interesting backup vocal harmonies with one of her collaborators. I don't recall his name, as well as this sawing fiddle in the background that for the outro of the song kind of gets its own little solo and a little piano that plays off of that fiddle as well. So I'd say that Sadness as a Gift is another kind of mellow ballad. And I really, the album closer is a song called Ruined. And just, it's a very slow piano ballad. It's just her with her piano.
So much coming through every hour or two. Can't get enough of you. You come around, I'm ruined. You come around, I'm ruined.
And like I said, I don't know, I can just sit and listen to her voice and the way she plays guitar every single day. And that's probably going to remain my top record by the end of the year. It's been my top record since it came out in the spring.
Yeah, it came out March 22nd, 2024.
That seems right.
And you're addicted still. All right. Bright Future by Adrianne Lenker.
Yep, Bright Future. That's my, I'd say, I said these aren't in any order, but I'd say is probably going to be my top album of the year.
Adrianne Lenker, number one.
Number one.
What comes in, not in any order, but what's the next album?
You know me, I hate ranking things.
Of course.
Sometimes I like ranking things. It depends on my mood. Well, you were talking about kind of older bands or more established bands that have kind of had these comeback records or just released things that got a lot of attention. And this isn't going to be Green Day, although that album was okay. Better than a lot of the stuff they put out in about the last 15 years, but it's not on my list. What is on my list, though, is Vampire Weekend's new record. I believe this was from April. It's called Only God Was Above Us.
Oh, yeah.
And fantastic. I listened to it again, like I said, kind of cramming for this coming on the show today. And I wanted to refresh myself and just a total return to form for the band. But after their last album, I know a lot of people liked Father of the Bride from like 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. It was basically an Ezra Koenig solo album with his producer and one of the people from Haim. And
interesting.
And she's on there a bunch, and I just didn't like that album. I liked a couple songs, but it was also after one of the other main songwriter of the group, Rostam. He left a couple years before that record, and he still hangs around and helps with some of the production and songwriting on a track or two, but he's pretty much out of the band at this point, just doing production work now. With all that in the past, I wasn't looking forward to this album, honestly.
Wow.
It got announced. It got announced, and I thought, well, I loved Vampire Weekend in high school, early college. Their first three albums are all just amazing for me. I love them so much, and I've played them on repeat for well over a decade now. But that last album just left such a sour taste in my mouth or in my ears. I just wasn't looking forward to this record. They got announced, and I thought, well, that's neat. Maybe I'll like it better.
Yeah,
I don't know. But then some of the singles started coming out, and curiosity got a hold of me, and I jumped in and I listened to the first couple singles, and I thought this might actually end up being pretty good. It's, like I said, it's a return to form for the band. I feel like it feels like Vampire Weekend, but it's not like a rehash. We're not doing the self-titled debut again with the African rhythms and whatnot. We're not doing Modern Vampires, part 2, but it feels like Vampire Weekend. The rest of the band, minus Rostam, of course, although he does produce and helped write one of the songs, which I don't think is actually one of my favorites, funny enough. But yeah, the drummer and bassist, both named Chris. That's a fun fact. They're both back and performing on most of the album. And yeah, it's not an Ezra solo album. It feels like a Vampire Weekend album. And in line with that Adrianne Lenker record, it's probably, at least of new releases, my second most listened to album this year. Because I've just, at least a couple times a month, I go back and either listen to the whole thing or I'm picking a couple tracks, when I'm driving around or whatever, and put them on and listen to them. So it's a complete surprise for me. I wasn't anticipating that, but here we are.
What were some of your favorites? Because I know, at least for me, I think Mary Boone was released as a single. That one to me was Old Vampire Weekend made new. I really liked that one.
Well, I hope you feel like loving someone soon.
And I think I also liked Classical, which was the second track on this album.
Yeah, Classical it is the second track, and I don't know if Mary Boone was a single, but you're right. Both of those do feel very Vampire Weekend-esque, but with that extra touch, that extra bit of flavor. At least on like Classical, I know they start bringing in these kind of guitar riffs, and they do this on a few songs. I know they do it on. There's another track, Gen X Cops, which I know it's Vampire Weekend, so this might sound funny to say, but at least like instrumentally or with the guitar, it's one of their heavier songs. I feel like it's got this the distorted guitar riffs that they're playing with, and it's the same thing with Classical. And so it's like you said, it feels like classic Vampire Weekend, but they've added these extra little flavors, these extra little touches to them that's made it feel fresh and not a rehash. As time goes on, it might somehow sneak its way toward the top of my list for the band. And I don't think that's a bold statement. Depending on the day, I could put any of those 4 albums, not Father of the Bride, but the other 4 at the top of that list and feel fine with it. This one could eventually take kind of that permanent spot because I just think it's that good.
Yeah, I know it was well reviewed. Got 4.5 or 5 stars a lot of places, 8 to 10, 8.5 to 10 out of a lot of them. I know for me, it came out right before the summer, and I had a big flip in what I was listening to where I just had to take a big shift. So I need to go back and listen to it again because it was early 2024. It just had such a good sound, and it's one that I have not re-listened to this fall. So Only God Was Above Us.
Yeah. And sometimes it happens with these early releases. They come out the first 3 or 4 months of the year and we rave about them. And then by this time of year, we've forgotten all about them and they fall off our list a lot of times. But that didn't happen with me.
Yeah. Fan all the way through.
Fan all the way through. And then my third album, once again, probably my third most listened to record from 2024. And it's also came out early, probably March or February. It's the band Mannequin Pussy with I Got Heaven. I think it's their third album. They are a very interesting group. I would say they're generally kind of described as punk or hardcore, or rather they're kind of indie and popish with touches of punk and hardcore. It depends on the song, or even the part of the song, because like on this album, the album opener, I Got Heaven, it starts off and the lead singer, Missy, it's this growling verse. She's screaming and it's very aggressive, very full of confidence, this vocal performance. And then you get into the pre-chorus and it's kind of almost like a talk singing. And then once you get into the chorus, it's very pleasant, nice singing with harmonies and everything. This nice vocal performance, and it just goes back and forth between that, even within the same song.
Our mothers did, and them and those before. And you say you want a difference, your honor to be yours.
There are a few on the back half of the record. There's a few songs that lean more into that hardcore punk influence. They've got a bit more of that edge to it, but I had listened to this band Their last two albums, Romantic, and their other album, Patience, was 5 years ago. And I listened to it and thought it was pretty good. It didn't fully grab my attention. I certainly don't think made any of my year-end lists I put out. But then I listened to this and was completely addicted from the first song. And it made me go back and reevaluate those albums. And they're a bit different than this record, but I can fully appreciate them now because they're just such a great band.
Yeah. I Got Heaven. It came out March 1st this year, 2024.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard to explain. And I had wanted to see them live. They came out here to Salt Lake,
Yeah.
but it was first week of May, and I had a baby the end of April. So, it wouldn't have been cool of me to just take off and leave my wife with our toddler and newborn baby. So I didn't go. But it's an album kind of, I'd say, brimming with confidence and aggression. There's a pre-chorus in that song, I Got Heaven, and I would read the lyrics, but I don't know if we like having big swears on this podcast.
We have lots of those, so we'll just say everyone else who's not ready for this, skip 30 seconds ahead.
Yeah, so in that pre-chorus, these lyrics are just fantastic, and once I heard this the first time, I had to rewind and be like, wait, what? And it goes, and what if we stop spinning, and what if we're just flat? And what if Jesus himself ate my fucking snatch? And what if I'm an angel? Oh, what if I'm a bore? And what if I was confident? Would you just hate me more? A lot of the song, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but if you listen to that song, and a lot of the album, I think it's dealing with just, I don't know, maybe how women are looked upon and how a confident or powerful woman or strong woman can be a scary idea to some people, I reckon.
Yeah.
And that's what I get out of a lot of this album. It's totally addicting. It's full of heavy riffs, melodic choruses and verses, as well as these songs with touches of hardcore punk elements and these aggressive vocals. I don't know that there's a band that can just switch back and forth so seamlessly between those two styles, even within the same song, as these guys.
I just downloaded it. I'm going to listen to it soon.
Excellent.
And like you're saying, powerful, strong women being a threat. Is anyone worried about that? That's not relevant to today at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. People aren't worried about that at all or having issues with that these days. It's a problem of the past.
Problem of the past.
Yeah, but that's my top three. And like I said, I don't anticipate that changing. After that, it's all a bit more fluid. There's a few more albums coming out still that I'm anticipating. And there's still albums that have come out recently that I just have found very dense but interesting. And I know at this point basically know they're going to end up on my final list. I just don't know where. I need a little more time to digest those,
Well, let's go through them. Yeah, let's fill out the rest of the 10 just so people, if they want to, like what you've given so far, might as well keep listening.
Yeah. So, and this is once again, as typical, is not in any particular order at the moment. I'll start with the band called Drala, and they're a kind of art punk or post-punk noise rock band. I really enjoyed their last album. Can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I have a copy of it. But their new album, Angel Tape, once again, it's just post-punk. I'm a sucker for the post-punk genre. I'm always listening to old 70s, 80s post-punk as well as some of the new stuff that's come out today. So if you like kind of punk or post-punk records like this, and if you especially like them when they like to play a lot of noisy saxophone, along with those heavy, clunky driving bass lines. Well, usually they're not clunky in post-punk, but these guys do a big, a clunkier bass tone. But if you like that kind of dancey punk or post-punk, this is the record for you, I would say. Once again, it's one I've continued to come back and visit occasionally. And yeah, I would recommend it if you like just any of the classic post-punk. If you like Bauhaus or Wire, any of that kind of stuff, I'd say go for Drala.
And that's spelled Drahla?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And Angel Tape, all one word.
all one word, all lowercase, because it looks cool,
Yep.
stylistic. It's a very good record and will definitely be on my list.
Fantastic. Drala. All right.
The next one, and this is a very interesting one for a couple of reasons. It's Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee. Cindy Lee is the project of Pat Flegel. They used to be the front person for a Canadian post-punk band called Women that broke up after 2 albums back in the 2010s. And the interesting thing about this record, before you go and search for it, the only way to download it is they have a GeoCities site. If you didn't know, there's still GeoCities sites, I guess. You go to their GeoCities site and you can download it for free. But if you want to buy it, they don't accept Venmo. They don't accept PayPal. You have to do a Canadian e-transfer of funds. So I haven't bought it yet. I downloaded it and I'm crossing my fingers and praying that they'll do a physical release at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't made my top 3 at this point because, frankly, it's a thick album. It's a triple album. It's 2.5 hours. It's over 2 hours long. So I have not listened to it all the way through more than twice. Basically, it's their drag persona. Think like psychedelic 60s pop with these very jangly guitars. I've seen it described as like old girl bands minus like the other 2 girls. So you just have the one.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and it's just there's mixes of disco, there's mixes of that pop, like I said, that girl pop or the 60s jingle rock pop and various other kind of genre shifts, but it's an incredible album that I haven't had enough time to go through and dabble with. But if you want to check it out, they do have it on YouTube as well for streaming. And I'd say give that first track, the title track of the album, Diamond Jubilee, a listen. And if you like that, then the rest of the album will be for you.
What could I find in a fantasy? A burning memory.
All right. And I will link the GeoCities in the show notes. So anyone who wants to give it a listen, transfer money to Canadian, we'll make it easy for you. You don't have to go digging.
Excellent. Yeah, and you can even put the YouTube as well if they just want to listen
and the YouTube.
Yeah. But it's super. It's a great record. You can just pop on any random track and have a good time with it. This next one, I don't know if I have a lot to say about it, a ton to say, but it's going to make my probably top 10, honestly. I just keep coming back to it. It's a hardcore band, Knocked Loose, with You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. Only in the last few years have I started to kind of dabble with hardcore and post-core or even metalcore, any of these really hard, heavy genres. So this band's totally new to me, and I'll just say it's full of heavy, catchy riffs and screaming vocals, and it's very perfect for if you happen to be driving down the highway super fast and you just want to blast something in your car. That's when I usually end up coming back to it, when I just want to blast something in the car. But
wonderful.
It's a great hardcore record. It's getting a lot of buzz this year, and I highly recommend it. I don't have a ton more to say on it, just that it's incredible and very heavy.
You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to.
And it's got one of my favorite album arts probably of the year as well.
That's great with that cross on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like the lit up cross and the girl or whatever standing staring at it. That's what drew me in, besides the praise it was getting. But I just thought the album cover looked really cool too.
You gotta love a good album cover.
Next up is a pretty big genre 180. It's Young Jesus with The Fool.
Okay.
I've dabbled with Young Jesus. That's a funny sentence. I've dabbled with Young Jesus a bit in the past with their past records. I particularly enjoyed their self-titled from a while back. So when I saw this come out, I definitely dove in. This is more of kind of singer-songwriter, laid-back heartland rock. A lot of it's just guitar and piano with the backing band, just the traditional drums, bass, all that. And it's another one that I really enjoyed initially, and I've kind of come back occasionally to it. I've listened to it in full again this past week, and it's just a very lyrically dense album. And so if you're more into something that's going to be focused on those lyrics and telling stories about characters that are either invented or possibly autobiographical or real, this is a great album. He's got a very interesting voice, is not what you'd call classically good or great, but like Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen or any of those kinds, or John Prine. It's interesting, and that's, at least for me, a lot of times better than the technically great voices, because there's more character to it and it's just more interesting to listen to. But yeah, Young Jesus, The Fool.
Heaven's a good debate. Someone wins and somebody else feels ashamed.
Great if you like that kind of Bruce Springsteen or John Prine singer-songwriter style, especially kind of Bruce Springsteen, that Nebraska era, those kind of heartbreaking, super lyrically dense and intense songs. This would be up your alley.
I definitely do love that. And I will say, I think in pop music, we don't see that hardly at all. So some people believe it's kind of gone, but I'm glad you're continuing to find these artists and albums and kind of bring them to light here.
Yeah, and that's what I always bums me out when, like, you hear people say, like, they don't make good music like they used to. I had a coworker 7-8 years ago, and he was probably like 4 or 5 years younger than me. I don't remember, but younger than me. And he knew I listened to music and I kept up on all this stuff. I had my stuff, my things I tracked what I listened to with. And so he's like, oh, well, what you got any recommendations? I'm like, oh yeah, sure, this and that. I tell him whatever. And then he just starts giving me like this really cheesy, and I'm not trying to judge people. It's okay to like a song. It's okay to like a band.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he told me, but it was some cheesy 70s rock band, and which is fine. But then he followed that up with how they don't make good music anymore. And so he likes to listen to the old stuff. And I felt so bad for him, because the magic of music and all art and media is you can consume the new stuff, and the old stuff is all still there for you to discover as well. There's endless amounts, and you'll never catch it all, but you can sure try.
And it's always impressive to me because people who love the same music that you love are making music influenced by the same things you love. So it's never that it's fully gone. You're finding other bands that are reimagining it today and capturing the essence while doing something new.
Yeah, everyone's consuming and absorbing all these different influences, these different artists and bands, and how they do things, and then they put something out that encompasses those different influences. So,
yeah,
I mean, new music, really, if you think about it, a lot of times, if you find the right stuff, it's taking all the old things that you like and making something fresh and interesting with it. So that attitude always bums me out, but it's okay to like a band. It's okay to like a song. But if it's,
Yep.
I've got a couple more here.
So let me make sure. So we've got 7 so far, right? Let me just do a quick recap.
Okay.
So we've got Right Future, Adrianne Lenker.
Yeah.
We started there. Then we moved to Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Me. Then, in no particular order, I'm writing some of them down. Knocked Loose, You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. Cindy Lee, Diamond Lee on GeoCities. Drala's Angel Tape.
Yes.
Young Jesus, The Fool.
Yes.
Mannequin Pussies, I Got Heaven.
Yes. Okay. Yes, that sounds good. 7. I've got one more that I can say a bit more about, and then I've got a few that, like I said, I'm kind of digesting, but I've just got to eat them up a bit more and see what I think about them. But they're super good. This next one, I don't know if you've ever heard of a band called Xiu Xiu.
Xiu Xiu. I don't think so.
And that's spelled Xiu Xiu. Xiu Xiu. I'd say they're my favorite band of the last like 20 years or so, or at least up there. I guess the best way to describe them is they're an experimental noise pop band.
Okay.
There's probably other genres or descriptors that could apply to them, but that's the kind of the widest net I can cast, because every Xiu Xiu album, that's the magic of this band. You never know what you're going to get with them, with each new album. And especially lately, this new album is called 13-inch Frank Beltrame Italian Stiletto with bison horn grips. And I haven't taken the time to look into what that's a reference to. But like I said, they're an experimental band, and you never know what you're going to expect. They use a wide range of instruments and non-instruments to make noise, to make the music, and to create effects on that music. And they've released a lot of albums. That's the other thing. So if you get into the Xiu Xiu rabbit hole, it can be very deep, but also very rewarding if it's for you. But what they've done interesting lately is with each album, they seem to alternate how they put together each album. And what I mean by that is they'll do one album that I would say is, I would call more accessible. I wouldn't say flat out accessible, because it still is Xiu Xiu and it's not for everybody. It's these kind of very quiet and dramatic vocals with at times chaotic instrumentals going on around those vocals, and with some dark lyrics at times, but also some sweet lyrics as well at other times. But what they do now, they've been doing the last few album cycles, is they'll do an album that's more accessible, more of that noise pop, where you're not going to hear it on your top 40 radio, of course, but it's got those pop sensibilities, those pop styles, with a bit of an extra edge or flavor to them. And so if you're open-minded enough, you'll catch on to that. But then they seem to follow that up with an album that's far more experimental, far more abrasive, and a lot of times the lyrics are darker, they're more disturbing, possibly upsetting in some tracks cases. And the point of all that setup is we're back on an album that is on the more accessible side. It's more on that pop genre rather than just full-on experimental dark music, which if you want to check out some of the darker Xiu Xiu, I'd say 2019's Girl with Basket of Fruit. But this album, I would honestly say, if you were going to try to get into the band, is a good jumping in point, just because it is more accessible and not so scary. Once again, if I've had more time with it, it only came out, I think, the end of September, and I just haven't had a chance to listen more than a few times. But it's got a good chance it'll end up in my top 5. Yeah.
While we were talking, I did have to look it up, because I'm like, what does this title mean? So apparently the 13-inch Frank Beltrame Italian Stiletto with bison horn grips is a switchblade that the singer owned and loved. And apparently they just put switchblades all across the studios they were recording as a way of saying, this weapon is really cool and macho, but it's not an effective combat weapon. It's just like masculine machismo. So, that just adds to the mystery of this album.
See, and that makes sense. And if you look at far more into the band, you'll see a lot of their albums, especially recently, have, in the last decade or so, feature knives on the cover, spelling out X's. And I know for the last few album rollouts, part of their merch line has been little knives, as well as coffee mugs. So
I'm a big fan of the knives over there with Xiu Xiu.
Yeah, I would say check this album out. And if you get the chance, they do, I think, usually tour a lot. I would say try to go to one of their shows, because Xiu Xiu shows are some of my favorite concerts I've probably ever been to. Last couple albums I've got for you, once again, they're kind of things that I've already decided are going to make my top 10, but they're just such dense albums and such recent releases. I haven't had a chance to, once again, fully digest them. But I'll start off here with the band called Chat Pile with their new album, Cool World. Chat Pile is a sludge metal noise rock band from Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma City. And I haven't had a chance to dive fully into like the lyrics on this one. And compared to their last album from a couple years ago, I haven't found a track that just fully stands out where you're like, this is what I'll show people. This is what I'm going to just pop a track on and listen to and like hear all the lyrics, But as an album, it's possibly more cohesive and more complete work than their previous record, God's Country, which I thought was just fantastic. And I have copies of both these albums. A lot of the lyrics deal with paranoia. They deal with kind of just the state of the world today. It's very bleak. At least on their last record, they had a song all about homelessness and how come we can't solve homelessness. And it's just a lot of that. It's a bleak world and it's scary and I'm paranoid about it. The instrumental performances on this record specifically are fantastic. They've got these punishing drums. And like I said, it's sludge metal. So it's metal, but if you're not familiar with the term, it's sludge metal. So it's more almost bogged down, It's not thrash, it's not speed metal. You're not listening to Iron Maiden. It's just screaming vocals, growling vocals with these grinding guitars, absolutely punishing loud drums.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits that theme of just paranoia and fear and everything that they have on these records. It's one that I just need more time with, but it's going to be in the top 10. Might sneak in the top 5. Could sneak and knock one of those top 3 out. Maybe not, but it's a very good record, very interesting band that I really need to see live at one of these at some point.
Chat Pile with Cool World. All right.
And then the last one is Geordie Greep. I had to look up how to pronounce his first name. It's spelled like Georgie, but with a D. Geordie Greep with The New Sound. Geordie Greep is an English musician. If you've heard of a band called Black Midi, they're very fantastic. I'd say kind of prog rock, elements of post-punk, just other genres, but prog English band. And they had 3 incredible albums all within the last 5 years. And they've gone on a hiatus now. But Geordie Greep came out with this album. It only came out, I think, a week and a half ago or so. So I definitely haven't had time to listen to it more than a couple times. But it's a fantastic record. I was reading or listening to an interview with him briefly, and where he talked about, I think, just like if you have all these ideas, music ideas, all these ideas for a song, why hold back? Why not go all out? And these songs are dense. There's so much going on just with every aspect of the song, with the lyrics. A lot of the lyrics, just what I've gathered on my first few listens, seem to be about sleeping with prostitutes. So that's pretty cool. Not sleeping, don't sleep with prostitutes. Well, anyway,
yeah.
Do what you're going to do. I'm not going to.
Cup of tea.
Whatever floats your boat, don't float mine. But anyway, it's interesting storytelling nonetheless. And just the guitars are very active. The style of this album is all over the place. Like I said, he's keeping some of those prog elements from his maybe previous band if they ever get back together. But currently a former band, Black Midi. But he also is bringing in like almost these Brazilian styles, almost like, I don't know if I'd say like bossa nova, but a little bit. And a lot of very jazzy elements to it.
You know my name, of course you know my name. Everyone does, it's true, it's true, it's true, it's true.
And so it's just a very dense record, and I really enjoy it. But I've only had a chance to listen to it like twice in the last week. But I would highly recommend it if you want kind of oddball, off the wall prog rock.
You like to chew on a good record. I think that's clear through these records.
Yes. Yeah. And Like I like a good simple pop record, and I don't know, I don't want to sound like an elitist or a snob or something, but I mean I still like Green Day. I mean, not maybe not this last album as much, but the old stuff is really good. It's not dense. There's not a ton to chew on there, but it's fun. But as far as new releases go, I do like something to chew on. It's far more interesting. It makes for a more interesting world, at least as far as music is concerned.
Well, and of course, it's always good to pick from the buffet of sounds and influences and speeds and styles and vocal arrangements. I mean, there's a band that I can't get enough of from the past few years, and I can't bring it up with almost anybody. Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. And I just can't get enough of them. And I'm like, you know what? It's just my little thing for me. I'm not recommending it to a lot of people here or there, but I think their music's great and they really hit. But it's so outside of everything else I normally listen to. When I look at my end of the year on Spotify, I'm like, oh, well, there they are up there next to Tom Odell and George Ezra and Dr. Dog.
That's no. I've only dabbled with those guys. It's been a long time too. I should probably dive in and give them another go. Maybe that'll be what I do tomorrow. But
go.
yeah, psychedelic. What is it again?
Psychedelic porn crumpets.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that's very different from George Ezra and those guys.
Yeah,
just a smidge.
It's really a pain in the ass to put on shuffle, and you're like, oh, Anderson .Paak. Okay, here we go. All right, let's go back in time to some Bruce Springsteen, and then they come on, and you're like, well, sorry, folks.
Sorry, everybody. Yeah, see, that's why I can't do playlists. I can't put together a playlist, and if I shuffle it, I don't know what's going to happen because my playlists. I don't even make them anymore, but when I do, they just turn into these giant body horror conglomeration monsters of just all sorts of different things. And like you said, you don't want to go from the Beatles to, I don't know, Bruce Springsteen, and then all of a sudden Geordie Greep comes up and people are like, what the hell is this? I don't know. I like it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll skip it. And then something else weird comes on and you're like, okay, I'll just pass the aux cord at this point.
Yeah, and it's just important that everyone digs into things they haven't listened to before. And you don't have to be the cutting edge for everyone listening. But it is important to listen to different music, listen to music you're not always hearing on the radio or on your favorite TikToks, or maybe it isn't your favorite TikToks. And I will say, for better or for worse, I am going to build a playlist with your help, just with a couple of tracks from each album. So we can link that in the show notes so people can give it a listen.
Yeah, I'll put something together, and with a few other things as well that I didn't mention. Like you said, There's a few kind of legacy groups that have put out good stuff as well that I think would deserve a spot on a playlist like that.
That sounds wonderful. Well, before we go, is there any album or anything you're looking forward to coming out in the next couple weeks before the end of 2024?
Yeah, it gets a little sparse toward the end of the year. Obviously, there's always that surprise release that we don't know about. And so I definitely don't know about that yet. But I've got a couple I'm really looking forward to. And one of them I think you're quite looking forward to as well. Father John Misty with Mahashmashana. I had to read that one slowly. Mahashmashana. I don't know about you, but I think those first few singles that he's put out are fantastic.
They are.
Once again, a total return to form after Chloe, whatever that album was called.
Yeah, it was jazz album.
It wasn't very good, I didn't think. Besides that, The Cure are coming out with a new album.
Oh.
Now, I've not really ever gotten past like the 90s with The Cure. I like The Cure a lot. I just have never delved into like the later, like past the mid 90s era of The Cure. But some of these new songs sound really good. Robert Smith is however old, but in his 60s, I imagine. And he sounds like it's still the late 1980s. Like,
wow.
If you want to hear someone whose voice is just aged like fine wine, it's him, because holy smokes. So I'm quite looking forward to that. And then besides that, I don't know if you're familiar with Mount Erie or the Microphones.
No,
so that's Phil Elverum. He's a singer-songwriter. He's been at it for probably about 30 years out of Washington. And his project for the last about half of that has been Mount Erie, and he's a singer-songwriter.
A stance that a river would take if
if it even wanted to pause.
But he writes, once again, great lyrics, sometimes works in with a bunch of very kind of unique distortion elements to his songs. At least lately, a lot of his albums have been kind of depressing or sad, but he's very good. I would recommend anybody check out The Microphones. Good jumping in point would be The Glow Part 2. If you maybe seen the album cover, it's the one with the elephant on it. But but yeah, he's coming out with a new record this year, and I'm super excited for that. The first couple songs have been really good. And then there's a singer-songwriter named Haley Hendricks, and she had an album come out going on almost 7 years ago now, I think, called I Need to Start a Garden. And I back then, 2018, 2019, I was obsessed with that album. I spun that so many times, had it on repeat for years. And she just hasn't come out with it much of anything since then, maybe an EP or so. But she's finally coming up with a follow-up, and it's called Seed of a Seed.
If we don't know better, if we don't know better, well, did my parents know better? No, but they tried.
And the lead single off that sounded really good. Not that I had any doubts. And so I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Well, we will add some of those to the playlist.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll get something together for everybody to check out.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for coming on, sharing some of the musical knowledge as well as Halloween movie knowledge.
Yeah.
And we'll have you on maybe turn of the new year, talk about some things, musical Christmas presents, and some hidden nuggets from years past.
Yeah, definitely would love to come back and do it again.
Did you watch The Perfect Couple on Netflix yet?
No, I don't even know about it. I've never even heard of it.
Oh boy. I don't even know what to tell you. Liev Schreiber, Jack Raynor from Sing Street and Midsummer.
Yeah.
And then we've also got Nicole Kidman. It's got a fantastic cast. We've got Bono's daughter in it as one of the main leads. Anyways, It is a perfect bingeable murder mystery in the Hamptons, kind of rich, waspy family. Somebody dies. Who's the murder suspect? It feels like if Agatha Christie spent too much time in the Hamptons. It's kind of a fun one. It's a quick and easy watch. We binged it probably like 2 or 3 days in a row on Netflix. So if you haven't yet, I would say definitely watch The Perfect Couple on Netflix.
That sounds fun.
What have you been watching recently?
I watched, you work for Crunchyroll, so have you watched Samurai Champloo?
I haven't yet, no.
Oh, dude, Samurai Champloo is probably, I think, one of the top 5 animes for me that I've ever watched.
Wow.
It's so good. When we were watching Shogun, I just kept wanting to watch Samurai Champloo, not because it's better than Shogun, just because it's about samurai in kind of Edo period Japan. It's so fun. So I'm a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender, in their art books, they reference all the anime and the TV shows and stuff that influenced them in their creation of Avatar. And Samurai Champloo is one of those shows that was an inspiration for Avatar: The Last Airbender. And so it's basically about these 2 samurai and this young girl who the 2 samurai want to kill each other, but in exchange for their lives, because of reasons, this girl, she essentially manipulates them into being her escorts as they travel across Japan in search of the samurai who smells of sunflowers. And it's really fun. It's full of anachronisms where you've got hip hop and rap and breakdancing happening in Edo period Japan, which is just fun to watch. And it's kind of got this almost like 90s like hip hop R&B soundtrack that plays while the show's going on. It's very fun. Great characterization, great character work. The writing's good. The fight scenes are really fantastic, considering this came out probably mid 2000s or something. And it's one of my favorite animes. I love it. And I know it came out. It came out after Cowboy Bebop, but one of the things that I like so much about it is that it's not one of these anime that just like keeps on going. Where you've got like Naruto or One Piece that just like to try and jump in right now just feels like a monumental task. Samurai Champloo, 1 season, that's it. Cowboy Bebop, 1 season, that's it. And so you just like you don't have to worry about needing to catch up on 1,400 episodes or something. Like it's the 1 season.
We love a good contained story sometimes.
Yeah.
Samurai Champloo on.
It's on Hulu.
All right, there you go, on Hulu. How often have you gone to Apple TV Plus recently?
Not as often as I would like.
Oh boy, I just can't stop watching stuff here. I'm their missionary and emissary. I want them to know that we are fans on this podcast.
Yes.
I talked a bit about Bad Monkey a few weeks ago, a few months ago. I kind of started it. I did finish it up. I don't think it was as strong of a finish as I wanted it to be, but it was good. And I would watch another season of it. And I think that's what they're kind of getting here. They're getting some of that psychness or some of the TBS level TV that we used to have from the early 2000s. If you watched Burn Notice, not every episode was an absolute banger, but it was good enough. You're like, oh, I'll keep watching this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to keep seeing what's coming next. And I think that's what they've nailed with some of these shows. So yeah, Bad Monkey. Don't think the finale is going to be the greatest thing in anyone's mind, but it is fun. And it's shot on location, or at least a location enough. And then I also watched right after that Sunny, which is a show with Rashida Jones. And I'm going to guess you've never heard of it because they don't market their shows at this company. It's about Rashida Jones is living in Japan. Her husband and son die in a plane crash, or the plane goes down. We know this all in the first episode. And her husband was working at this robotics company, this tech company, and she thought he was working on fridges until the next day they drop off this assistant robot, this big white-looking wannabe Amazon robot, Sunny, who's there from her husband to help her out. And she hates robots. She hates all of it. Yeah. She doesn't trust them. She's a little bit of an alcoholic. And the story is her and this robot and some friends she makes along the way going through Japan, trying to figure out, like, what was her husband really doing? Is there more to the story? The Yakuza get involved, which of course we have to love. There's a robot battle scene that she finds in an underground place. It's just kind of fun going through a fictionalized Japan where robots and things are already kind of part of the culture and society, but it doesn't feel or look like iRobot. It's much more like goofy Japanese smiley toys and Furbies and little robo dogs, you know, like you used to get for Christmas. Again, this one's not an amazing series. I don't think it gripped me like Silo or Hijack, but it was fun. And Rashida Jones is fun. There's some twists and turns. It definitely doesn't have like only Western storytelling, but it's a good one. I thought Sunny was fun, and love seeing more shows set in Japan where they're speaking Japanese, you know?
Well, I mean, it's kind of been, Japanese summer for us.
It has. Are you going to knock us out with another Japanese show? What else have you been watching?
No, but I'm going to knock us out with another robot pick.
We love it.
Have you seen The Wild Robot yet?
I haven't.
Oh, dude.
I know. Every time I go to see it, something happens.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, it's
Kleenex box good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Like, I remember seeing the trailer for it, and it's kind of got this haunting rendition of, like, what's this song called? What a Wonderful World. It's like this haunting rendition of that set against, like, beautiful painterly style animation. You got this robot in this Pacific Northwest, like, forest, and just a lot of animals. Oh, it's a feast for the eyes. It's just a buffet. It's beautiful. It's so good. Yeah, so I was really excited for this movie, and I went and saw it with my sister and my niece and my nephew, and I was a little hungover when I saw it, I'm not going to lie, but I did definitely cry. The movie, I mean, It's basically about motherhood, and so anyone who has a mother, whether your relationship is positive or negative, I think is going to be emotionally devastated by this movie because it's so good. Like a really stunning voice actor cast. You've got Lupita Nyong'o, you've got Bill Nighy, Kate Connors, Pedro Pascal, and just like a stunning cast. And it's so beautiful to look at. It's this like turn in the last 5 years that animation has taken to being more painterly and more kind of this combo between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional art styles, where the kind of the Pixarification of animation was, let's try and make this look as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
And then what that did was it just led to a bunch of CGI movies that looked exactly like real life. And it's like, that's not what we want out of animation. We want something special and unique and something that we can't get in real life. And so I think this is another fantastic entry into the world of contemporary animation movies right now that are just very artistic, very painterly, and they're doing things that you can't do in real life. And I think it's based on a book series, The Wild Robot. And so I think there's a sequel that's planned because I think there's at least 3 books. It's a beautiful story about motherhood and about growing up and about being more than what you were made to be, and animals in the wild. I just love it. Can't get enough of it.
All right. I know I have to see it. I did hear from one friend. They said if you're not a parent, it's just not going to hit right. But it doesn't sound like that's the case for you.
No, because you have parents.
Yeah.
And so even if you aren't a parent, you have parents.
Empathy.
And, yeah. So I think that granted, I'm an uncle, so I guess, I was watching it with my nieces and nephews. And so maybe that had an aspect of it, but like, I don't care. Just go see it. It's great. Just go see it because it deserves to be seen.
Wild Robot. Does it rank in like top 10 of the year for you right now? I know we're going to do this later, but.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm going to have to chew on that one.
All right. We'll check back. I'll go see it. Wild Robot.
Yeah.
Let's wrap that up for today. Thanks again for everyone who listened. Again, like I said, we are going to have DJ's playlist of his top 2024 albums in our show notes, on our social media. You can find it on Spotify. Look for the Indie Magazine podcast. And until next week, watch good TV and movies and listen to good music.